It's the TMI Project podcast, a series of stories about the too much information parts of ourselves we usually leave out because we're too ashamed or embarrassed. I'm your host, Eva Tenuto. This is Season 1, Tragedy plus Time equals Comedy. Before Sam Osterhout became an award-winning writer and producer in New York, he was a guy from Minnesota, married too young, and working as an assistant Montessori teacher. Then, like in that great Peggy Lee song, he started to wonder, is that all there is, my friend? We first heard Sam's story back in 2015 at one of our story slams. Each participant had to read a monologue in which they included the line, "I quit." We liked it so much we asked him to read it again at the celebration of our 5-year anniversary. Keep in mind that this recording is from the early days, before we were even thinking about making a podcast. There are some minor audio issues that you'll most likely hear if you're listening on headphones.
So my first wife bought this bar of soap that smelled like Thai food, and I ate it. I was fat, but not in a good way. I looked glandular or something, or bloated, like my small frame hadn't caught up with my explosive fatness yet. I was an assistant Montessori teacher. There was this 3-year-old in class whose parents were always worried about him because he wasn't speaking yet. He was 3. He was a giant Dutchman named Walter van de Nienhausen, who got nosebleeds all the time and kept his hands tucked in his underpants all day, and I loved him just without any end. I knew he spoke. I tried to tell his parents. His language was garbled, but he understood. He understood everything. And I knew that it was very frustrating for him to not have speech. So his parents wanted to call in this specialist. And I said, please don't. I said, stick in there. Give him a couple of months. Just keep trying and trying and trying, and he'll get there. Give him the summer. My then wife worked at this direct marketing place, which isn't as glamorous as you might expect. She was a proofreader, and also fat, and also not in a good way. She had just gotten her annual review, and her boss told her that everyone thought she spread a general feeling of doom around the office. And, we had a good laugh about that, because it's true. You get in something, and you try to make it fit you. And sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. But you try, and you try, and you try. Anyway, I was helping Walter van de Nienhausen with some work one day when he pulled his hand out of his pants and he shoved it in my mouth. And it was rather unexpected. And I got hoof and mouth disease, which is actually called hand, foot, and mouth, but I call it hoof and mouth. And that weekend, my then wife and I went to the pool at her father's country club, and I was doing Monday crosswords because, sometimes you just need a victory, and my wife was just staring off into space. No books, no magazines, no Sudoku, no sleeping, just staring off. This gentleman approached, and he stood over us. He was fat, but actually in a terrific way. Everything about him fit. His belly, his deep tan, his little bikini, which I found distracting, but also exactly right. He just fit. He fit himself. I'd been drinking piñata coladas, which is what I called them. I'd had maybe 1,000. The gentleman said, "You two lovers?" I said, "No, we're just married." I could see him looking at the hoof and mouth sores on my lips. He moved on eventually, and we went home, and I ate that soap, which was in the shower. It smelled like pad thai, which I'd eaten probably twice a week before I was married, but I hadn't since. I foamed at the mouth. I felt rabid. It smelled like pad thai, but it certainly didn't taste like pad thai. And I must have looked rabid. And this isn't a story about how terrible my ex-wife was or how I was being victimized. It's about giving up when you should. Because you try and you try and you try, but then you find yourself fat, and not in a good way, with hoof and mouth disease, eating a bar of soap in your shower, and you just have to say, I quit. My ex-wife, who owns her own dog walking business now and recently went through yoga training, is an all-around, pretty great person. But then she was just sitting at that pool, staring off into space, spreading a general sense of doom. Not fitting. I quit the Montessori that fall, but I was right about Walter van den Nienhausen. It wasn't time for him to give up. He kept trying and trying and trying, and his language just exploded by September. And when I told him that fall that I wasn't going to work there anymore, he said, well, where would you go? I didn't know. But it didn't matter. I know now. I became a writer. I moved to New York City. I lost much of that awkward fatness. I'm no longer with my first wife. Now I'm with my wife. And that all fits so beautifully. But back then I said, I don't know Walter van den Nienhausen. I always called him by his full name. I said, I just have to go. I have to go be a grown-up. And he started crying. And he said, but I'm going to miss you so bad, Sam. And I hugged him and I said, well, you're not even going to remember me, bud. Which is true, and ultimately, probably for the best. Thanks, guys.
Keep up the story binging with the next episode of Tragedy Plus Time Equals Comedy.
My name is Erin. I am a standard of beauty that isn't accepted by a majority of this world. I am black, tall, and fat.
I'm Eva Tenuto, and my co-host is Micah Blumenthal. Haley Downs is our producer. Our director of external affairs is Sarah DeRose, and our operations manager is Blake File. Our theme song is Secrets by Edison Woods. Special thanks to Sam Osterhout, our featured storyteller. This episode of TMI Project's podcast, Tragedy Plus Time Equals Comedy, was produced in partnership with Radio Kingson, with production assistance from Ida Hakkila, Nate Brogan, Marlan Barry, and Manuel Blas. Visit tmiproject.org/podcast to see this episode's writing prompt and submit your story. Here's the part where we ask for your help. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps. TMI Project is a nonprofit organization, and we rely on the generous support of our listeners. Help us continue to create radically true stories that have the power to change the world. Make a donation today. And now, if you're inspired to tell your own story, join us this summer at Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. Micah and I will be teaching a TMI Project True Storytelling Workshop August 23rd through the 28th. You can find the details on our website, tmiproject.org.